Art, Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll, Senator Caslin, Senator Douglas, Senator Givens, Senator Kerr, Senator McGarvey, Senator Meredith, Senator Nemus,
Present.
Senator Webb, Senator West, Chairman McDaniel.
Here. All right, very well. Having a quorum, duly authorized to conduct business. Lose your words sometimes. We'll go ahead and get started. Mr. Secretary, if you wouldn't care, come on up with your guests. Identify yourselves for the record, and please proceed. I guess that's the 21st century equivalent of hat hair, right? Could I get you guys to make sure your mics are on, please?
There we go. Is
There
that
we
better?
are. Thank you very
Okay. Would
much.
you like me to do that again?
No, I think we're
Okay,
all right.
great. All right, thank you. So today we're here to talk with you about the federal funding for childcare and how that's being distributed, what the time frame is, the amounts, so you can see where we're going, what's being distributed where, and just see for yourselves. It's a large, unprecedented amount of money going into the child care system in Kentucky. I think it's a very good thing, certainly needed. And Sarah, if we'll start off. There are three really big pots of money. Part is the Coronavirus Relief Act. That was almost $68 million. The CARISA funds, which is really close to $196 million. And then the ARPA funds, which then, as you can see, it gets up to, almost $750 million going in. So all told, you can see that is a large amount of funding to go into and support the child care system. And what I think has been very important as we've gone through the pandemic is the identification of the importance of child care to the entire system, to how folks work, how folks get to employment. It is something that I think we've all undervalued for years, and it is absolutely critical to economic development and economic supports across the Commonwealth. In House Joint Resolution 57, we were looking at benefits cliffs, was part of the discussion, and really where we ended up was the largest cliff, really, when you look at all the different programs, and there are some pathways off of some of the others. Childcare is the big one. Childcare is where you really come up against when you either get childcare or don't. It's a tremendous difference. And probably in terms of the contributions to the cliff, I would say childcare is the biggest contribution. Here, next slide, thanks. Here's how to think about how we've done and distributed the funds out of the CARES Act. You can see the CCAP assistance, which is really direct childcare stipends, those kinds of things. Stabilization payments. What that means is as based on occupancy, not on attendance. We provided funding and are providing funding for child care centers to keep open. Hero bonuses, you all know well. Those stabilization payments, again, another tranche of those. And then some of the limited duration pieces. Right in the beginning, we asked some folks to stay open and help us with our healthcare workers, first responders. It's a very small piece of this entire funding stream, but just to let you know what that is. Then the CARISA funding, again, the stabilization payments, again, just keeping places open. And then some of the health and safety pieces that having to do with these, right? With masks, with cleaning supplies, all sorts of things like that. And then helping take care of co-payments for families as they go through the centers. This is a big change. Senator Meredith, you helped us with that in Medicaid. with this funding, we've been able to eliminate, while this funding lasts, some of the co-payments for parents. So again, that's that funding. So we have some remaining funds there. We're going to continue the co-pays as long as we can. We're going to continue the cost of background checks, because we do ask folks to do background checks, and that got a little difficult through the pandemic, who was open, who was not, how you could get it. So we've been supporting that throughout. And these all these funds have to be fully expended by September 30th, 2023. We believe we'll be able to do that. It is something that we're good at the Cabinet. Next slide. ARPA stabilization funds, again, what we did was we spread out the stabilization funds. So in this case, there were different times that we would process the funds to encourage people to stay open, right? And then to support them over a longer period of time, so it wasn't like one big chunk of funds and then somebody could just close. So we kept this going, and this is continuing. So that's an important piece. We sent out the first round. We've now getting ready to send out the second round. Folks had to supply us with information to receive these funds. There's some federal requirements around these. And so I think a few of them didn't make it this time out of the 1,700, but it was a very few who weren't able to supply the information in time. Then we do that on capacity, as I said earlier, not just attendance. And again, same time frame, September 30, 2023. Next slide. So the Child Care Development Block Grant, should have spelled that out. The 204 out of that is dedicated to that subsidy, which really means the subsidy piece is where we've had the ability to increase from the 40th percentile of income up to the 80th. This has really helped families be able to access the services that had previously not been able to. That's the payment. The eligibility piece from 160% of poverty to 200% of poverty, that's really, I think, been helpful to more families. Basically, it does have a feature of how families get through and from CCAP onto their own funds. Again, we have an additional year for these funds, and this has really been we have to supply a lot of data through this, and this is a support. It's like Medicaid. This is the way I think about it, or SNAP, or without these payments, our child care system just in general would collapse. So next slide. And then there were some specific questions around how these funds were used. A couple of things. I'll start with the second first. We, in the last round, provided some stipends for what are the small registered and certified homes. So think of these as like the family homes, right? They're 3 or so different children who are not related. We in Kentucky, this is not a category. We're usually a little small on this category when you compare us to other states. So we were really trying to beef that up. And think about it as entrepreneurial activity within the child care system, ecosystem. So this is supporting that really small center that wouldn't necessarily be licensed like the rest of those centers, but it's in-home, like an in-home child care center. We had about 42 that came through, and the other good thing about this is where they have started up primarily has been in child care deserts. So this has been a really interesting program, and I'm excited about it because it starts to talk about how we support entrepreneurial activity across the Commonwealth, and it's the Commonwealth supporting that. So it's a $2,500 stipend that we give folks so that they can begin their own centers. Because of that, or in tandem with that, going back up to the first one, we're also providing $100,000 matching grants for folks who want to become licensed centers, to employers, to others who want to open those licensed centers. That's just opened up in terms of making application. We're partnering with the Chamber of Commerce to let folks know that this is available. And I'm saying it every time I can. So we're really excited about the possibility of expanding the number of child care centers across the Commonwealth, and I think that that's really something that we need. There are some where they can apply, and we've had some, and we've provided some, where we're going to be able to help the infrastructure, so some one-time costs as opposed to ongoing costs, where we'll make improvements and help centers make improvements in their physical plant. We're also providing some early childhood scholarships, again, to increase the supply. Child care centers, we haven't seen a lot close. We've seen some close, but what we have seen is a lack of workers in these centers where they've had to close classrooms, and they can't provide the capacity that they had in the past. So this kind of gets these apprenticeships, these early childhood scholarships, they will help increase the pipeline. Some of what we're talking about with nursing, right? Some of the same kind of concept. So really trying to increase that pipeline of folks who are interested in early childhood development who could then go work in child care centers. And then we have some also training dollars that are focused on special needs and administration. We know that sometimes folks get into childcare because they're interested in childcare and children and helping children across the Commonwealth, but sometimes they don't have that business training and that administration training. So some of this funding is dedicated towards that, to provide that support for center directors who would then be able to have a little more on that sort of business side, because it's a business. And so the other piece, next slide, is we have some public-private partnerships with school districts and preschool that is exciting and really helps kids with special needs. And that's, you all know I've been at the cabinet for 112 years, and I was at the Commission for Children with Special Health Care Needs for a while, and that was always a challenge. Finding childcare for kids with disabilities is difficult, is very difficult. So we're hoping to increase that, increase some of that capacity. And then you can see some of this is technological upgrades and things like that. Again, just trying to help the infrastructure. And again, trying to use some of these funds, which is really just so that when these funds go away, we'll be able to have a better system and a stronger system moving forward. Next slide. And I think we're ready for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for the presentation today. I'm going to kick us off. I've got two questions, one of which is pretty black and white. The other is a little more theoretical. On slide 7, you referenced that approximately 15% of the child care slots in the state are children receiving subsidy. Mm-hmm. Prior to the CARES Act, so the first round of funding, do you have an idea of about what that percentage would have been?
I don't think it's changed that much.
17%.
Yeah, so it's right in the same neighborhood.
Okay, all right. So my fear was obviously if it had been like 3 or 4% prior to that, we were going to have a real issue heading our way. Secondly, this is the more theoretical one. The startup funds for family child care homes. Mm-hmm. Obviously, one of the things that you are competing with, and government probably will never be able to compete with, is the cash model, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm in construction. There's more than a few folks that float around in construction that do cash work. In-home child care is a big cash industry. Mm-hmm. Especially when you start adding in the requirements of, some of the things to obtain money through the cabinet. How does $2,500 even necessarily compete in that environment, or is it a space that we necessarily even want to try to compete?
It has helped. So as I said, about 42 have taken us up on that offer, which I think is, I don't know if they were existing or not. I hope that they weren't. But it has been helpful. And I think if we can incentivize folks to think about that type of entrepreneurial activity. When I was at Louisville Metro Government, we had a small, very small, micro business entrepreneurial support. I loved that program. I thought that was a fantastic program to get folks trained and to get people into doing things that they loved. We had a range from like accounting to cleaning services, to food services, to art, and about a 50% success rate, frankly, with that. We've had a little better here so far, but we'll need to see where that comes in a couple of years to be able to talk about that and to tell you it was a success. But so far it has been, and I really like that idea. It's something that I'm trying to figure out how we do more of in the cabinet, which is why this particular piece was very exciting to me. And I think we can. Of course, there are going to be underground economy sorts of pieces that will exist. But I think if we can encourage folks to come in and be a part of like getting background checks and things like that and support them doing that, I think everyone benefits.
Good deal. Thank you. Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Secretary Freelander and Dr. Vanover, thank you both for being here this morning. And Dr. Vanover, it's always a pleasure working with you and appreciate everything that you do for the child care industry. One of the main reasons we asked you all to be here this morning is as we move into the budget for the Senate and in looking at what our needs are in the child care industry to get more centers open, to increase the workforce, things that you all have addressed through this funding, we kind of need more direction on what you all feel we can do and what areas we need to invest more in to get where we need to be. And that's a component of it. And then as I've spoken with Dr. Vanover, we also hope to have a joint resolution during the session to put together a task force to study child care in the state, and hopefully at the end of that have a plan to completely restructure child care into a very sustainable model in the future. And that goes along with this because, as you have said repeatedly, the concern is what's going to happen when this money runs out. And we have to have a model in place, and we have to have plans in place to pick up and move forward so we can take care, making sure we have quality centers. And Senator Givens in districts like his to make sure we have child care at all. Mm-hmm. And so two fronts that we're obviously going to have to be working on. But right now, where we are is trying to get the best investment to move us forward in the area of opening additional centers. Mm-hmm. What recommendations do you have, Mr. Secretary or Dr. Vanover, on what direction, where can we best appropriate any additional funds? You all have spread it out pretty well, and the incentives are there. And let's hope that many people take advantage of that and that we see large numbers of centers opening up throughout the state. But what recommendations do you all have, sir?
Sure. Thank you for that question. And thank you for your work on behalf of senators all across Kentucky. Really do appreciate that. So, of course, we support the governor's budget. And I think I really welcome a group to look at childcare and the structure of childcare in the interim. I think we're going to be able to provide you data from what we're doing with these funds about what looks like it's working, and frankly, we'll have some things that don't work. That you'll always see that. So, and you see our general direction, right? It is, and we're taking it in a lot of areas. How to increase the pipeline of personnel, right? That's going to be critical, right? So, and then what's that pay structure look like? And how are we going to couple some of this? How are we going to couple some state investment with what's going on with the federal money? I'm really excited. I hope I'm not setting myself up for disappointment about some of the setup funds and the matching funds for more centers to come online to see if that has an impact. I know that there's interest on the part of employers because they've seen what's happened to their workforce when they don't have childcare, right? And if the assistance, if the where'd the word go? The grants and the matching grants can encourage more folks to open up, and if that's a good number, right? Is that a good number? Will that get folks coming out? I think we're going to see some of that. And then also that just kind of partnership across the board with not only schools, but with community organizations. How else can we support more folks having childcare? And even some of our universities, how are they going to partner? And I think that's when you talk about how we bring in and maybe change the structure, I think that's going to be a really telling piece for what we do. And even with preschool for universal 4K, right? There's a lot of money here. How do we make sure that we support the infrastructure, whether that's enhanced reimbursement for infants and toddlers, right? That's where folks always say they lose money. Well, let's pay people what we need to pay them, right? I think how we structure this moving forward. And again, I welcome a group to look at it and work with you all. I think we can come up with ways. I hope we can come up with ways that support the structure across the Commonwealth for childcare, because it's one of the underpinnings of employment.
Okay. The model with our high schools, and I know many high schools have childcare programs within the districts. Is that something that with the Division of Childcare, are we pushing that? And that seems to be probably could be the most productive model in making sure that every school district has this type of program within their system, and then those that are offering some level of pre-K within the school system, there's obvious opportunities there for hands-on experience. Do you all know what the numbers are in our school districts that have programs set up, and is that an area that we're looking closer at?
It's a small number. The high schools would qualify for those matching grants.
Yeah.
So they would be eligible to apply for the $100,000 matching grant if the school was able, and it's up to $100,000.
Right.
So if they already have a room, then they wouldn't need the whole amount. But we do have city governments or high schools that may be interested in that fund that would be able to set up something similar. And many of the high school students, well, all the high school students qualify for CCAP because they're still in school full time. So they would have that available to help support them.
And I've even had conversations with some of the private universities who might be interested as well. And a lot, I used to be over family resource centers too. But some of the youth service centers, right when they opened up, really identified childcare as a need. But it was not an across the board. They do their own local planning. But there were a few that really tried to get into childcare, and as you say, for some of that experiential reason as well.
Okay. And I'll one more, if I may, Mr. Chairman.
Sure thing.
A lot of discussion on the model with universal pre-K, and I know the governor's supporting of the public model. I don't think that's feasible. I think we need to continue the path we've been on with the blended model. I think that's the best possible approach. Plus, we do not want to risk losing more child care centers in the state by taking the preschool kids away from those centers. So I think there's a lot of discussion to be had on that, and I assume that'll be part of our discussions during the interim. The issue on pay, I know the sustainability grants are based on the level of pay, and so we should get some data on how that works as far as those centers that are paying the $15 and above, and those are at $13, I think is the next tier. Have you all been able to glean anything so far from that scale? Are you noticing any obvious differences?
We are collecting monthly data through the entire time period that the sustainability payments are being issued. Some of that is federally mandated. Other things we're asking, like the turnover rates for teachers, if they're paying higher, or the teachers staying, some things like that. And so we should be able to collect data all the way through the sustainability payments and get a good idea of what is motivating teachers to stay and how higher quality programs are succeeding. And I'm very excited to see what that data is going to look like and how it can help us with infrastructure in the future.
Yeah, I'd say it's a little too early, but I think we're going to have more data for you as we look at these things in the interim. I always look at like what's best for kids, right? And I think if we can bring up our kindergarten readiness scores, right? How we do that is what I think is most important for us to do, to get kids kindergarten ready and school ready. We need to pay attention to that. That's been a challenge. That's been a challenge for as long as I remember.
Very good.
That's got to move, Chairman. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Senator Givens.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Great to have the two of you here. I'm going to move through a rapid-fire conversation with you, so just run with me, okay? What you've shown us is an amazing, amazing amount of money flowing in really quickly for a time-limited period. So I'm going to throw a crazy idea at you that may or may not fly, but we do have the deserts. And one of the biggest struggles is a talented caregiver, grandparent, stay-at-home dad may say, I want to take care of some kids. I'm good at this, but I don't want to deal with all the paperwork, bureaucracy, and headaches. One-time monies you've got that are crazy amounts of money, think about some sort of a family child care bounty hunter model. Go to the private sector and say, private sector, you know how to stand up businesses. Bring your talents to stand up an in-house eight-person child care center, and for everyone you get stood up and get star rated at the 1-star level or however you want to do it, we're going to give you $2,000, but you got to get them up in 6 months. Yeah. Think crazy. That's you don't have to answer. Just take that thought with you. Now, slide with me quickly. This is rapid fire.
Yes.
Slide with me quickly back to slide 2.
Mm-hmm.
These stabilization payments, $470 million in ARPA funding. Again, this is not one you've got to respond to. Just think with me. We've got time-limited amounts of space to get the money spent in. Can you charge admin cost out of this? For the cabinet?
It depends on the
you can,
grant,
yes.
actually.
She's saying yes.
It depends on the grant.
Here's the theory. Maximize your admin cost.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take that out of your budget with your blessing. No chuckle. And we'll have that money for you to extend on out past the deadline to keep this child care effort going. Just a thought. Rapid fire. Here's the one that vexes me the most, though, and you mentioned a number of 1,700 facilities that are getting these payments.
Mm-hmm.
You know where I'm headed with this? On that slide, $470 million flowing into 1,700 facilities. That's $276,000 per facility. No?
No.
What'd I do wrong?
It's based on the capacity of the individual facilities and the payment rate. So a facility that is licensed to hold 285 children is going to have a very different payment rate than an in-home facility that has a maximum of 6 children. So the large facilities that have larger mortgages, have larger fixed expenses, and have a larger number of staff that they have to pay, have a corresponding amount of money compared to the smaller facilities.
But there's 1,700 that are going to receive the monies. That's the sum of all the universe, ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
That still averages out to be 276,
right.
I think, if I did my math right.
Right, over 9 payments, which is why we didn't want to do it all at once.
$276,000 per child care facility, and that's going to be on top of all their other revenue streams, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's a lot of money. Just saying.
It is, but if
and I'm not denying the value of it, but that's a lot of money.
Yeah, and if you go back with me, some of the challenge has been, and you are correct, and it is a challenge, and it will be a challenge moving forward. No question about that. Beyond the end of 23 and 24, but what we're seeing is centers that are struggling, and they're struggling with their personnel and their costs. And what this hopefully will allow us to do, and what the aim of this is to get them through what is probably the most challenging time, well, any of us faced, but certainly the child care industry has faced. This has been an incredible financial hit for them.
So last quick question. Thank you for that. Mr. Chairman, last quick question. $276,000 average per facility. Are there any constraints on what that facility can pay their workers? And that constraint comes as a result of them taking the money. They're limited on how much they can pay?
They're not limited on how much they can pay, but they are encouraged to pay higher. They have a list of specific expenses that include staffing as the top priority, but also fixed expenses, specific training, resiliency mental health supports for their staff and their children. But again, they're paid for a per child amount. So the same centers are not going to get the same amount over time.
I said last quick question, and I'm sorry to ask another one, but you indicated this is not based on attendance. This is based on the space. Is that what occupancy means?
Yes, the maximum amount of children they're allowed to have in the facility based
Okay.
on the fire marshal report.
So obviously, if I'm going to be a profitable facility, I want to have as many kids in the space as I can. But the number of kids I have does not physically in the space does not dictate my monies. It's just the number of spaces I've got. Thank you.
Very well. Senator West. Thank you, Mr. Secretary and Ms. Vanover. Great presentation. My questions deal with when did these payments start?
The first payment went out at the end of 2021. The second payment went out a week and a half ago.
They're fairly new payments.
Yes.
Okay. And I'll just ask the big question and let you take it from there. So the big question for me is, are the scales tilted in any way towards public versus private? And when I say, what I mean by public is quasi-governmental entities, so like your YMCA or people like that. When you're giving out the payments, you've got these applications that they have to fill out. Is there a difference there, or is the money, in your opinion, going to be evenly flow down to private entities?
It's all based on occupancy. The only funding that I think that might be in question was early funding that went to the limited duration centers, and that was about 1.5 million out of all that we're talking about here, which, million here, a million there. But that was the only really funding that wasn't dedicated to a specific group, not the entire group.
Okay, thank you. Senator Keslin.
So just to kind of, Senator Gibbons, it was kind of going down some of the same paths that I was going to ask questions on. And so to take it a step further than where he did, roughly how many kids are going to be qualified to meet this program? Like how many kids on a daily basis will we see in child care facilities, so we can kind of break this number in per child cost?
So prior to the pandemic starting, the full occupancy for Kentucky was 167,134 children. We lost approximately 9% of our child care facilities during that, but we have had new facilities come up. The issue right now with full occupancy is that many centers are short-staffed, so they have had to close 1 to 2 classrooms because of lack of staffing. So it's hard to get an idea of enrollment versus occupancy, but we are asking that now on our monthly data sheets that is being that they are required to fill out in order to get the supplemental payments. But it is a large number of children we're serving.
So 176,000 would be a good number to use then, based off prior information then?
Yeah, 167, yes.
160.
For all children, and then think about and these estimates are high, right? How many kids who receive CCAT?
Approximately 30,000 is
Yeah.
usually our estimated number. Now, we've just opened the floodgates, and we don't have data yet, but we will see an increase in subsidy because we've increased the introductory federal poverty level from 160% to 200%.
And as the chairman asked, we started before the pandemic at about a 17% of those slots being CCAP slots. We're at 15. Are we going to end up at 20? I mean, we just don't know yet, which is why I think having an interim study would be really helpful.
And one more follow-up question, and I know it's kind of been asked a little bit by Senator West there as well. So the way I understand this, it's more or less going to be subsidizing already existing daycare facilities, and that could be a public, private, or a quasi.
It's a licensed. Think about it as a licensed facility. Anybody that's got a license.
Okay.
Very well. Senator Nemus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Secretary and Doctor. My question is, when the money goes away in 2023, who's going to pay, or how is the facilities going to pay the $15, $20, whatever they're paying?
I think you identify the challenge, and it's one that we're going to have over the next year, which is how do we figure out how to make sure that we keep these centers going, right? That is, it was a challenge before. We were losing centers before the pandemic, and that a lot of the wage pressure and thing that you addressed there. And we will see it again when these funds go away, unless we can figure out a way on how we structure things differently to make sure that we're supporting the centers going forward. I think all across the board, we undervalued childcare, and I'm hoping that we don't continue to do that.
Senator Douglas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two short questions, I guess. Approximately 15% of the child care slots in the states are children receiving subsidies. We can talk about 15 or 17. Am I therefore expected to take from this that 83 to 85% of the child care slots are private pay and fully funded? Okay.
Yes.
Now, some of the recent data suggests that 40% of the working age Kentuckians cite child care responsibilities or problems for reasons why they are not working. Do you have any information regarding the workforce status of those folks who are receiving subsidy?
You have to be, by and large, you have to be employed to receive subsidy.
What does employed mean?
Good question. Exact answer?
You must be working a minimum of 20 hours per week or be a full-time student in order to receive any type of subsidy.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. All right. Well, guys, thank you very much, both for being here today. Secretary Friedlander, we have interacted many times on many different subjects. I know your commitment. I appreciate your commitment. And I want to say right now, and very specifically to the United Way, my level of disappointment in that organization for the questions that they sent last night designed to trap the Secretary into some poor answers today is tremendous. And for those interest groups who think you can send this committee questions after hours with no explanation, no comment, no meeting, save your time. We won't do it to this cabinet or to any other cabinet. So, Mr. Secretary, ma'am, thank you for your service. We sincerely appreciate it, and we look forward to an honest and thoughtful dialogue moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have Senate Joint Resolution 99, sponsored by Senator Douglas and ably co-sponsored and assisted by Senator Higdon. Gentlemen, at this time, please come forward.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Senator Donald Douglas, Jessamine County, District 22. I've been working here with Senator Higdon, and he is here to talk as well. I'm here today to ask you to consider and pass Senate Joint Resolution 99. The joint resolution is of extreme importance to our taxpayers here in the Commonwealth, and that is a vehicle relief tax of $70 million a year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. As you all know, I filed Senate Bill 75 back on fairly early in January, and Senate Bill 75 would freeze the motor vehicle tax at the 2021 level, which would prevent the increases that the Revenue Cabinet and NADA book value has put into effect. We ran into some constitutional issues, and we've tried diligently to find a way around that. And like I said, a lot of conversation has gone on about this bill, and I'm sure every one of you have received constituent emails because there's a lot of concern across Kentucky about these increases in the assessment value of vehicles. Few days ago, Senator Douglas and Senator Givens brought forth an idea, and they asked me to, look at the bill, the state law as it exists today. And in state law, there is a provision that says the standard value of the motor vehicle shall be the average trade-in value prescribed by the valuation manual unless information is available that warrants any deviation from the standard value. Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of information out there that warrants a deviation from standard value. In the past, we've recommended to constituents to go to the PVA if they thought that their value was overassessed. If they had a vehicle that had several 100,000 miles on it, that would be a deviation. If they had a vehicle that had hail damage, that would be a deviation. But all these other factors that are coming into effect right now that have skyrocketed the value of used cars is also a deviation. And I think Senate Joint Resolution 99 addresses that, and I'll turn it back over to Senator Douglas to explain his bill. But I want to thank him for actually reading the law and bringing this forward, him and Senator Givens.
Thank you, Senator Higdon. Now, I've got a few things I'd like to say to the chairman and to the committee here. Senate Joint Resolution 99 directs the governor to order the Department of Revenue to exempt the pandemic-driven increased significant deviation in vehicle values from the motor vehicle owner's property tax calculations. Instead of assessing the value of the vehicles at today's assessment, what we're simply asking is that we assess those vehicles based on the January 1, 2021 level. This would remain in effect for the motor vehicle assessments for the years 2021-22 and 22-23. This would bring a great deal of relief to the Kentucky vehicle owners, to job creators in the automotive industry, and also to businesses with fleet vehicles. Judy Midkiff, who is spokesman for the Finance and Administration Cabinet, who actually oversees the Department of Revenue, notes, the tax on motor vehicles is a property tax. The Kentucky Department of Revenue administers that state tax as the law exists. Now, let us take a look at some of the laws. KRS 138.460 provides that the motor vehicle tax is an annual property tax based on a percentage of the vehicle's assessed value. KRS 132.485 states in part, standard values of motor vehicles shall be the average trade-in value prescribed by valuation manuals unless information is available that warrants any deviation from the standard value. So this is in law. Ms. Kathy Johnson, however, of the Kentucky Department of Revenue, Director of Valuation, points out that these values are set in December each year prior to the valuation. The book that was suggested was the National Automobile Dealers Association. There are a number of other books out there, but this is what she suggested was being used. And using book values is required by law. Typically, vehicles go down from year to year. In a letter from someone else, that is Ms. Kathy Thompson, who is the director of the Division of State Valuations, she sent a letter to the Kentucky Property Value Administrators and to Kentucky County Clerks on January 6th of this year. And in that letter she wrote, overall, the 22 valuation increases for vehicles compared to the same time last year is up approximately 40%. So we're looking at a 40% increase in valuation of these vehicles. She even went on to talk about some of the issues causing this: new vehicle production and inventory constraints, elevated new vehicle transaction prices, ongoing limited supplies of used vehicles, and the increased dealer interest in used vehicles. Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, she just described a significant deviation causing changes in standard values. I would also add, however, inflation, the fears that were instilled in some of our public over COVID and other medical issues, the multifactorial shrinkage in our workforce, the motor vehicle chip shortage. All of these combined with the supply chain issues to create significant deviations in the vehicle prices. This is the same significant deviation referred to in KRS 132.485. There's no doubt that Kentucky taxpayers are facing financial challenges, but we all in this room know that is not new. What is new is that the taxpayers are not at fault for this once-in-a-lifetime pandemic economic disaster that has caused disruption in our economy. Our taxpayers should not have to suffer the pain of the artificially inflated vehicle values and therefore leading to the artificially inflated tax burden of $70 million. On January the 12th, one of my esteemed Senate colleagues contacted Ms. Holly Johnson, who is the Secretary of Finance and the Secretary of the Finance and Administration Cabinet, about that 40% issue. They did contact him the same day. Their reply read, "Thank you. We are reviewing. We will get back to you soon." That was January 12. We've heard nothing back. Mr. Chairman, I submit to you and I submit to this committee that the public doesn't need relief soon. The public needs relief now. Since this administration has chosen inaction, it is incumbent upon the duly elected members of the representative branch of government to require this administration to do so by a joint resolution that carries the same weight as law. We must do the right thing for those who have elected us to be their voices in Frankfort. Right now, our constituents are calling us to take action. Senate Joint Resolution 99 makes that decision for them on behalf of the lawmakers, on behalf of the lawmakers' constituents. I just want this to be clear that Senate Joint Resolution 99 would not be necessary if the administration would do what is right and make the choice to exempt our public from this artificial tax increase. This is our chance as representatives to actually act like representatives, to show the people of the Commonwealth that we understand that they do not work for us, but we work for them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And we're developing a pretty extensive list that want to comment on this. We are going to adjourn today at 10 o'clock. So if I could ask the members, as you have your questions, and to our esteemed presenters, please, brevity is now the order of the day. So starting out, Senator Meredith.
Thank you, Ms. Chair, and I will be brief because it's not a question. Senator Higdon, you're correct. Getting as many emails on this, almost as many as we got for the unemployment debacle. And nobody saw this coming. I mean, KRS 132.485 is intended to protect our consumers because assets depreciate. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. I don't fault anybody for that except the communication on this. Great that the Department of Revenue sent out a letter to the PVA, but they never sent anything to us. And we were all blindsided by this. This is a travesty. It's a callous disregard for the taxpayer, for the working people of the state. It is not right, and the longer we put this off, the more hassle it creates. Already I'm hearing from a local county government said, how are we going to pay this back? We're paying out this money every month. It should have been addressed the day we came back here. The governor should have stepped up and said, here's our plan for this. But as always, we never heard from him on this. It's inexcusable. What's happened to the taxpayers of this state, the working people of the state, it's inexcusable. So I heartily endorse this resolution. The sooner we pass and get it through, the better for the people of this state. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is for either one who wants to answer, Senator Higdon or Senator Douglas. Senator Higdon referred to an exception in the statute, an existing statute. Is it your opinion that